Welcome to the Lens and Veil podcast. Today is a special podcast because it is the 1 year anniversary of when we first launched this podcast. So what we decided to do to mark this special occasion is to have a question and answer podcast, a Q&A podcast with all questions provided by our Discord server. And of course, you can join our Discord server. The link to join it is on our website at garphill.com. And feel free to join. And so the next time we do something like this, you can also contribute. So everything in this podcast will be questions from our Discord server, apart from the top 200 draft, which will be continuing. So even our classic starting question has been provided by our Discord server. And so now we're going to kick that off. Fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses on land.
Yes. This is a classic. I've heard this one before. I have some theories and opinions, but I'm interested in hearing what you guys think.
I would not want to fight a regular-sized duck. Like, I've got bad memories of swans out at Namanu Bird Sanctuary, and like birds can be vicious. So even a small one, I'm running. I'm not fighting that thing.
My first instinct was to say, 100 duck-sized horses. But, ducks are they're not that small, and horses kick pretty hard. So, and like, you've got 100 things that you have to pay attention to. At the end of the day, I decided, like, the real test of your manhood would be a horse-sized duck, Like, you've only got one thing to worry about. Can you be quicker than it? Can you defeat it? Men have taken down lions, so I might need to do a bit more training on my reflexes and go to the gym or something before taking it on, but I'd take on the horse-sized duck.
If only life were just like a board game where you get better and better loot for killing better and better things. You get more experience, better level ups and all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, it's not like that. But I like your angle. Rather than going for the, hey, what do I have the best chance of survival with? You're going with the, what is the most bragging rights? What is going to prove myself the most? To me, the answer to this, at least for survival, is very clear. I'm going to take the horses, the 100 duck-sized horses. Ducks have beaks that are used to crush like crustaceans, snails, and fish. Can you imagine scaling that thing up? Also, think about the fact that ducks, not only can they go on land, they can go on water, and they can go on air. It's just a full frontal attack from all areas. You're not safe anywhere from these ducks, man. Like, seriously. Who thinks that this is close? I don't think this is close at all. I think the horse is just going to run away from you, right? That'll be the most annoying thing, is actually like getting to them. Are we defending ourselves against them, or is it like an aggressive hunting type thing?
Fight. It's a full-on fight, right? They're in it, right?
Is it enclosed? Is there like a battle arena?
I think they're aggressive, man.
Like, I'm not going to survive the duck or the horse.
The duck will be quicker, though, guys.
Which is the quicker death, yeah. Like, one snap of the duck and I'm done.
Yeah.
Or it's like 100 bruises to my gut from the horses. I think you're right though, Sam. Like the duck, the beak, it's a brutal weapon right there, eh? Whereas the horses, yeah, they've got a mean kick, but not at that size.
Yeah.
It's like a toddler kicking you in the shins, which is going to hurt a little bit, but it's not going to ruin you. But 100 little horses, that's a lot of horses to get through. Like, you need the stamina to win that fight.
Exhaustion and just the sheer annoyance of duck-sized horses, right? Maybe they'd be cute. I'm not so sure.
Can you imagine taking on 100 actual ducks though? Like actual duck-sized ducks? Like,
no.
I mean, you get swamped by like 5 of them at the pond and you're like, I'm done.
Have you guys ever looked a horse in the eye?
Can't say I have.
Those things are very, how do you explain it? It's just like full darkness, right? And you're trying to wonder what's going on in the horse's soul. It's kind of like looking in a seagull's eye, but in a seagull's eye, it's just like nothing, just a little black dot. But with a horse, it's like kind of scary.
I think the real question here, guys, is do you prefer horse meat or duck meat? Like, once I kill my horse-sized duck, I'm going to be feeding my tribe for many months to come. How much meat are you going to get off all those duck-sized horses?
Little chicken wings. Barbecue them.
But yeah, I don't know. I just think having to pay attention to like 100 little things that are swarming you, like, you're better off. I mean, I imagine we can like have some sort of primitive weapons at least, or are we just fists?
I just feel like the horse thing is the level you face before you get to the boss fight, which is the duck. So, like, and we all know the boss fights are harder.
What about if it was the duck-sized horses versus the horse-sized duck? Like, who's winning that fight? We're just spectators.
The horse-sized duck, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. It's just superior in every way. This thing can go everywhere.
So why are you fighting the big one?
I don't know about the physics of it though. Like if you scale up the duck's size, can it still fly? Does it still float? I don't know. I guess it still floats. It'd have the same density.
Yeah,
but,
it's probably too heavy. I don't know if it'll fly. That's a good question. I mean, in New Zealand, we've got the big fat parrot that can't fly because it evolved to be too heavy to get off the ground. So.
So we're going to warm up for our podcast with a new one-off series. Maybe it'll come back. Who knows if we get enough questions from the community. And we're going to warm up with this category called Quick Fire with Shem. So a lot of you put in some really interesting questions that we felt maybe wouldn't lead to too much of discussion, but they're interesting to have answered regardless. So Shem, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
I am ready. Fire away.
All right. If Lego gave you a blank check, which board game of yours would you turn into a Lego set first?
I would go with Legacy of You, because I don't think there's many Lego sets out there with that kind of theme, and I would like to build that Lego set.
Which of your games is most likely to still be played in 50 years?
Probably Raiders of the North Sea. It's had staying power for over 10 years now, so probably keep going.
Now, there's two possible answers for this one. How many games, or if you'd prefer, how many years with games do you have forecasted at this point?
I think we have, 8-ish games in the works, I think, 8 to 10. So it's about 2 or 3 years ahead of schedule, I'd say.
How many of those have been announced?
Like 2 or 3. I
Okay.
don't know.
If you could design with someone outside of Garphill for a board game, who would it be?
There's lots of people I would like easily design with, I think, because we have similar styles, but I'd like to learn from someone. But I would go with one of the old greats. He might not be like being called the old great, but a grandfather of game design, and that is Michael Kesling.
What non-Garfield game feels the most like one of your designs?
I've had this about 2 or 3 times, I think, where I've played a game and thought, I could have designed this, or I could have published this at least. And the one that sticks out the most is Underwater Cities.
In the parallel universe where Garfield doesn't make games but makes other toys, which toys would you make?
That would easily be collectible figurines. It has to be. I love that kind of stuff.
Does all the talk and guesses that the secret project is Circadians related make you more inclined to expand that universe?
I guess it does a little bit, because the main problem that we have is that it's like, is there enough demand for this? So hearing that people are wanting it definitely helps.
If you had to reinvent one of your games as a kid's game or a party game, which would it be?
That's an easy pick. I would pick Gara Bray so that I could use it to teach my kids to tidy up their mess.
And how would you change Scarra Bray?
Nothing at all. It's exactly the same. My kids will learn how to clean up their mess.
And the kids' version?
One less resource.
Nicely done, dude. That was very fast. I was going to say that it needed to either be fast or interesting, but you managed to do both. So very good effort. And one quick fire question for you, Zach. Fast or interesting? What was your favorite secret project theory so far?
Well, of course, I don't know what the secret project is. Wink, wink. My favorite theory so far was the Cold War spy theory. I think the people who had that theory actually looked at the clues, looked at what's out there, and made up a plausible thesis based on the information that we've put out.
All right, so we're all warmed up. Let's get into the meat of this then. We've got some great questions written here by our community about game design, development, about production of games, and how it sort of works just being a publisher. Some of those will be sort of more Shem-related questions. So let's start with this one, and hopefully will lead to just discussion amongst us all. How do you decide how to space the release of your games and the order of release? Why not have Kickstarters closer together so shipping could be grouped?
There's a lot of reasons, really. I mean, one of the big reasons is to give each game its time in the spotlight. If we could do 3 or 4 ancient games all at the same time if we really wanted to. And we've got the games in the pipeline. We could delay them and put them together, and everyone saves on shipping. But then, is everyone going to remember all 3 or 4 of those games? Probably not. They're going to either pick one they like the most, or they're going to buy all 4 and sell 2 of them without even playing them. You know, that's just the nature of the board game industry right now. So while we could do that, it's kind of better for us to actually take our time and do 1 or 2 at the same time, and really like promote them, give them their time in the sun.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, we're really blessed to have some loyal and faithful followers who will purchase nearly every Garphill game that comes out. And kind of weirdly, as a service to them, we don't want to release too many games at once because we don't want to expect them. We don't expect people to buy every release, but we don't want them to be so stressed, I guess, financially about having to buy all of these games. And so we're trying to figure out what's the right number of games that we can release per year and it be sort of feasible and manageable for people to be able to buy them. But not only that, for those games to get their time on your tables and you actually get to play them multiple times, because we design these things to be played lots and lots of times, and we want people to be able to enjoy each of them as much as they can.
Yeah, and I think, Shem mentioned before that we've got 8 to 10 games in the pipeline. And so that can seem like all these games, and if it's like released too many together, it can just seem like products that we're trying to flog off to people. But actually, these are games that we've spent a lot of time trying to make them the best they can be, and we really love them, and we don't put out anything that we don't think is great. And so also having that time in the sun for each game is important because we think that they deserve it. And so it's important not to kind of drown them amongst other releases.
It is hard, though. It is hard not being able to talk about the latest games that we're designing, or even a whole bunch that we've kind of got up our sleeves. The order of release, part of the question, there's a few kind of things to bring up with our experience. One is that we actually designed or had the base of the design for Scholars of the South Tigris before Wayfarers of the South Tigris. And once the mechanisms kind of came out for Wayfarers, we made the call that this would be the first game in the series. So I'll ask your opinion on that soon, Shem. But also there was a game that the three of us worked on together this year. And if I'm not mistaken, that jumped the queue. Once we designed that, we were like, oh, actually, this can be released earlier. So what leads to those sorts of decisions, Shem, about a game jumping the queue ahead of games that were designed earlier?
Sometimes it's like the series that it's in. So we have the medieval stuff, the ancient stuff, we've had Circadians, and we don't want to like do a bunch of one thing, one after the other. That's a big part of it. So the game you're talking about jumped the queue in front of some other ancient games or at least one ancient game, I think, that was already kind of in the pipeline, and ahead of some other stuff that we know needs some more time for art and development. So is that, but yeah, it's more about like giving variety to people who enjoy our games. If we find something that comes together quickly and is offering something new and fresh, then maybe it's like worthwhile pushing that ahead because it's going to give a different flavor to our fans, not just like, it sounds bad, but it's like just another ancient game, because they're not just another ancient game to us. They're like, well loved and designed and spent time on it. We love them as they are, but I can see from the outside looking in, people might think, oh, it's another ancient game. So trying to put in other things that are fresher, I guess, to the outside looking in between those games is important. And also, like, there's other things at play as well, like the development process for certain games is longer than others. So while one game I can think of in particular, Sam, that we've been working on for probably over 2 years now, is still being pushed back by other games because it needs more time, because it's going to take longer to get everything finished. So some games just come together really quickly and you can just pump them out and they're done, and the amount of development needed is actually quite low, whereas some need more time. I guess on the same thing, there's 2 ancient games that we have way off in the future, and the topic came up recently about, oh, would we switch those around, like swap the order of them? And really I was like, well, they're both kind of ready-ish, but the one that's older, I just want to let it sit for longer. I want to think about it more and just see if anything else is to be developed that I haven't thought of. So sometimes you just want it to marinate and just sit there and pick it up when it's ready.
Yeah, totally. I think also there's an element to which, like, some of these games we think potentially might bring new people into the Garphill universe. And so we want games to kind of add more people to be our, loyal followers who we're really grateful for. And there's other games that we make for the people that are already in. And like, we know that they'll love this as a service to them, as a thank you to them, games that we know that they're going to enjoy and love with our own design style. So we might be more willing to take risks with these other styles of games. They might jump the queue and we'll see how the risk goes. And then we'll get feedback from that kind of approach.
The other aspect to that game that we've been talking about without talking about is like the name of the game. We feel like the name is like, why has this not been taken yet? So sometimes it's like the IP side of things, the property of like, this thing needs to be out here now before it gets taken by someone else. Like it's a thing that should exist already, and we want to make sure that we're the ones that do it first.
Following on from that, how do you know when a game is finished, when you've finished development? At what point do you stop balancing or tweaking and realize this game's ready?
Well, I don't really get to this point. No, sometimes I do. I think, look, there are some styles of games, like Chaos Order is one of them, games with heavy asymmetry, I think, and games with scenarios and stuff, where it's going to be really, really hard to get to an end point of the game where it's completely done. I think the higher the interaction the game is, and the more asymmetry there is from the start, is going to lead to more and more balance work to be done. And what also happens is when you play with the same group of people, then a meta game will develop and people will pick things up and then they'll pick up counter strategies and things kind of develop. It's like this kind of organism, this ecosystem that is evolving and evolving. Video game designers, they have it good in a way where they can keep patching the game and we just keep having patches. For a game like League of Legends, it's been out for 15 years, 16 years at this point. Every 2 weeks, they come up with a new balance patch. And that's a game that's highly competitive, highly asymmetric. So in a sense, they're never done. And I felt that way with Chaos Order, that we could keep kind of going round and round and round in circles. But we got to this point where we're really happy with it. And just the reality is, at some point, you need to call it. You just need to say, it's done. We're happy with it. In some games, this happens much easier. And you can get to a point where the game is very stable after multiple plays. Like if you've tested the game 3 times in a row and you haven't made any changes in those 3 times, that's probably a good sign. Yeah. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, for me, it's often when you play it and you play it and you play it and you realize we're not changing it anymore. There's nothing else to be done. That's often the sign for me. But then you might put it down for a month or two and then pick it up later and make changes again. So sometimes it just needs to sit for a bit.
I will say that I've actually learned a lot just recently from watching people play my games. So I played about 24 playthroughs of a game that I'm working on, and I got a lot of data about how stuff works. But then after about a week of watching people play the game, I had a much fresher mind coming back to it and watching people play, and I made some good changes then and there that I didn't see while I was head down in the game, in the puzzle. Getting people to do blind play testing, or also just watching them play or getting feedback from that. Not that they'll always have the answers, but they might bring stuff up that helps you to come to other conclusions that you wouldn't see when you're fully heads down in it.
Yeah, I guess that kind of comes from the fact that us as designers playing our games, we also create our own meta, right? Like what you were talking about before, Sam.
Yeah.
So actually seeing other people play shows you how other people approach the game, which might not be how our group of in-house playtesting approaches the game, so that can really help to reveal things that aren't working or aren't clear as well for, rules wise, and whether things are intuitive or not.
Yeah. There was this really helpful thought that I heard from one of these board game Q&As, not from us, with someone ages ago, and I've heard it repeated many, many times. But if you playtest your game, let's say you playtest it 100 to 300 times, that's a lot. That's really a lot of plays if you think about the hours and stuff and all the iterations in between. If you go on Kickstarter and there's 3,000 copies, which is a pretty good print run, it's a good Kickstarter. We get that on most of our games. And those 3,000 copies get played on the day they get released, which is unrealistic. But already the world has played your game more than you have. And I find that actually a comfort, that you're not going to be able to see everything. You don't have the hours or the time in your life to be able to play it so much that you see every single possibility. And I find that comforting, that there's going to be things that people will see. But what's really helpful as a game designer is to think about the extremes, to think about what are the edge cases that could show up, and then accounting for those things and letting yourself off the hook. It's not going to be perfect, but get as close as you can.
Yeah, and you have to be realistic, especially from like a publishing point of view. Like you say, there's only so much time you can put into a game, and it's about that return on investment. Like, if you put in so many hours and hours and hours, and then everyone plays it once, like, all those hours actually worthwhile? So you have to be realistic. Like, as a designer, you could keep tinkering forever, but we're in this is a business for us as much as it is a passion, and we love doing what we do. Like, there is a business side to it, and we have to be, good with our time and good with our investment and stuff, so that we're putting out products that we are proud of, but are also financially viable, that we can still feed our families,
Yeah.
Okay. What is the full timeline for game development from conception to birth? And which comes first, the concept or the mechanism? This is kind of 2 questions. Let's go with the timeline first.
Well, they're both answered by a variety of things. Like they can all be very different. Like some games can take years, some can take months, some can take weeks, and then they can be inspired by a variety of different start points. Like really. So it's everything and everything thrown in together, I think. So, but it's just say for a classic Garphill 2 to 4, 1 to 4 player Euro game, you're probably looking at like a year of work from start to Kickstarter, maybe 9 months or even quicker if it just comes together fast. And you're most likely starting from a thematic inspiration these days. Like we still have games that we start from mechanical inspirations, like, oh, thought this cool little thing we could do with this trick, with this new mechanism, whatever. But usually before that, there's at least a setting. Like, oh, I want to make a game about these people or about this time period or this story. That's the more generic like thing. But there's always outliers.
And what are the steps in the process? We've got the initial idea, game design. We've got iteration, playtesting, development, graphic work.
It'd be so different for each game, right?
Yeah.
There's been games where the game design has been a game jam of 1 day or 2 days or something in recent history. And there can be game designs that someone's been tinkering on in their head for a bunch of time and then finally brings it to a prototype. Or, you know, there can be all sorts of ways that the game comes into being. But yeah, I guess the most important step probably is just the development and iteration, I think, because that's what really shapes a game into being a great game and the game that we can publish, right? Is that just playing it over again and changing stuff and just kind of chiseling away at it until it's a great game.
We've had games where like we will know what we want the game to be, like from the start. We've got some mechanical ideas or like thematic ideas, and it takes us months to actually get to a playable game. Like we will redesign and over-design. This was like Viscounts was like this, Adventures was a bit like this, and even some more recent ones we're working on like this. And then other times you just sit down and start talking, and then a few days later we've got a working game, and there's no reason why one works and one doesn't.
Yeah.
Just this is the nature of design.
Yeah. This kind of leads me to another question which no one put in, but with these first few questions, I get the sense that there's an element to which you kind of have to trust yourself and you have to trust kind of the game you're putting forward and trust the fact that you're having a good time and therefore other people could have a good time. How do you get to that point of being able to trust your own taste and your own instincts about games? And how do you deal with bias as well? Because I know that we are more inclined to like our own games. Bias is the thing. How do you guys deal with bias and getting to that point of confidence of being able to trust yourself without being delusional?
I think confidence only comes from experience anyway. So the more you do something, the more you start to believe in yourself to be able to do that thing. But that can take decades, like in any area of life. It can take you so long to get out of that imposter syndrome and go, no, I can actually do this. I am good at this, you know. So I've got the luxury of been doing this for a long time now. So the fact that Garphill exists and that we have people who look forward to our next game gives you that confidence. Like, okay, I've made a few things they've liked in the past. Surely it can be done again. And you start to really trust yourself based on that. That there's, you know, I guess there's people that believe in you as a designer or as a publisher. It gives you a lot of confidence. Anything else beyond that, like if it's just self-confidence, it's not worth it. You know, it's got to be the fact that You've got a proven track record. People are looking forward to it. People are encouraging you and expecting big things from you. So that helps a lot.
I think for me, confidence just in myself is quite difficult. And part of that's because of what she mentioned is that I'm a very new designer. I've only got one published game, but a few games in the works. They're all co-designs. The key for me is that co-design thing is that I find the validation of my ideas from co-designers to be very helpful to go like, oh, actually, this is good because, you know, I'm kind of like, is this a good idea? And then when you have someone else that's like, oh, yeah, that actually works, then like, it's like, yeah, okay, it does work. It is a good idea, you know? And that helps me to be confident and to let creativity flow. Whereas if I'm working just by myself, like I'm trying to challenge myself at the moment to work on a game by myself, but I don't do it very often. I just second guess myself all the time, and probably there's lots of people that find themselves that would like to design a game and maybe find themselves in that same sort of space. And my only advice would be find someone else to do it with, because having that feedback of someone else to work with who says, oh yeah, that's a great idea, or no, that's a bad idea, let's not do that. And that back and forth can really help you to actually solidify what you think about the game, where you think it needs to change. It can just help to have that confidence as a team rather than putting all the weight on yourself.
Sam, you mentioned about bias. I think that can be a good thing because even if you're starting out, if you think your game is amazing because you designed it, you're going to quickly learn if it is or it isn't when you start showing people. And so that bias is going to be proven, I guess, in one way or the other. So if people say, no, it's not good, then you go, oh, that's good to know. I can't actually trust my own instincts so much. I need to practice more, need to develop more, learn some more. Whereas if you've been doing it for a while and you think, no, this is great. I know it's great. I enjoy playing it. And you show it to someone and they say, oh, no, it's really good. I like this. Then you go, cool. All right, I'm learning. I'm getting experience and what I think is good is good. So the bias is a nice, I guess, plumb line of like learning how much you can trust yourself.
Yeah, that's really great. And it makes me think that there's actually this other side of the coin of bias, where bias, is usually considered a bad thing, and most of the time it is. But actually, if it's helping us to be more excited about our game and to pick up momentum and work on it because we believe in it, we think it's good, then that's it. In a sense, there's a good element to that bias as well. It's helping you to keep pushing forward with this thing that you're excited about. You keep motivated. You've got the enthusiasm for it, and that's great. Like you need to have enthusiasm for these games that you're working on. Otherwise, they'll just sit there on the shelf. And I've had games. You guys probably have all had games where you've lost some enthusiasm for them, and it's like, oh yeah, there was that game that I was working on, and it's just kind of disappeared. So yeah, maybe there's kind of two sides of the coin for this idea of bias. There was this quote, actually, this esports guy the other day. The Europeans, they always lose to the Koreans. They always do bad for years and years and years. And they were asking, is it going to be different this year? Is it going to be different this year? And he says, if there is delusion, there is hope. So, anyway.
All right. Have you ever scrapped an idea for a game because it didn't feel Garphill enough?
Absolutely. Plenty of times. I mean, I have games published by other publishers, so that's a clear sign right there. Before Architects came out, before Sam showed me his first prototype, I was trying to work on a game what I thought might be of the South Pacific. I was thinking of changing up the time period entirely for the trilogies, maybe even the artwork entirely. And so I started working on this game about foraging in the bush to get wood and food and stuff. It's going to be based basically in New Zealand at that point. And it was working quite well. It was cool, but it didn't feel like one of our games at all. It felt abstract and lighter, and that game ended up becoming Noctiluca, which Z-Man published. So, like, that was a prime example of like, this game is cool and I like it, but it's not Garphill. It's not something that we would usually do. So, and I think that will continue in the future. Like, I know, Sam's got stuff he's working on right now that probably doesn't feel right for Garphill. I've got stuff that doesn't feel right for Garphill. So that's just, you got to know the brand, and it's separating the publisher from the designer as well. It's kind of important.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with David Harding from Garphill Games about this, about like the brand. And I'm really interested in your thoughts on the brand. Obviously, we don't do party games. We don't do all sorts of things. Is there a stretchiness to the brand? Because we came up with Chaos Order, and that was a game that probably people didn't expect from Garphill, and probably lots of people still haven't heard of it or haven't played it because it's a Garphill game. Yeah, what are your thoughts around branding, and is there stretchiness, and how much? You don't want it to burst, and you don't want to lose identity. What are your thoughts around that, Shem?
I think there needs to be some level of adjacency in order for us to pick up a game like that. So Chaos Order, obviously with you guys being the designers, was a big part of it. But then the fact that it did have strong Euro elements was a big part of it. And also for me, it was a chance to try something new with an IP side of things. Like, let's try and build our own world. We've done plenty of ancient medieval stuff, historical stuff. Let's try something sci-fi. So it's a bit of a trial there. The more recent example would be careful what I say, the Secret Project, where I played this a couple of years ago with Sam, very early prototype. You had the theme and everything there and everything was working, but it's like, this doesn't feel Garphill. Like, it didn't, thematically it didn't. Just put it that way. It still felt like a Sam game for sure, and had lots of engine building and path to victory and that kind of stuff going on. But even on that first play, and then future players were like, yeah, it's probably something else. And I know, Sam, you were like kind of gearing up to start pitching it, thinking like, I don't want to have to pitch games. I don't like pitching games. Trying to find a home for this game. And then at that point, I think I got to a point where I was like, I really like this game and I want to publish it, but it's not that Garphill on the outside. How do we make it feel Garphill? How do we do that? Or, how do we approach it? And so a lot of times it's about finding something that makes it feel like it belongs. This is probably an example of a game that really is quite different. And the only real connection is Sam. So it's going to be a bit of a risk. And it's like, hopefully this gets received well. But we're in that space now where we can kind of try things. And I used to always try things. Like that's how I started making games. It's like there's just every game I designed, I pretty much published, and it either went okay or didn't. And I figured out people like Vikings quite early on. So that's kind of how we stuck with the North Sea stuff. But now that we've got these kind of established brands, it's fun to try and do some new things.
Yeah, have you ever thought about just making another publishing label with another name, like Garphill's, or like, another publisher that is linked to Garphill? And I know lots of companies do this, where they've got their light games or their other style of games. Have you thought about doing that? What are the advantages of that? And then why haven't you? I guess.
Yeah, I have thought about it. And I do kind of have that in a way. I co-own Arcus Games. So Arcus has done Shelfie Stacker, which is one of my games, which obviously didn't feel like a Garphill game either. It's more in that kind of Sagrada Azul kind of space. Then we did Dreadful Meadows, which is in a very similar kind of space as well. And then we did Dawn Raiders and Shadow Moon, more grittier games thematically, which I guess were maybe more closely aligned with Garphill, but still wouldn't feel like they were of our, our current lines. They feel different. So Arcus is, in a way, is meeting that for me a little bit. It's not under Garphill, it's not part of Garphill, but it's a whole separate company. But yeah, there is still that thought of like, I know, Zach, we've talked about like, do we do Garphill Kids, Garphill Light, or, but we're still
Garphillers, come on, man.
Yeah.
Garphillers is a good name, actually. Maybe we should do it now that we've got Garphillers.
And we're still limited. Like we're still one group of people pushing out games through one channel, and we're going to be selling to the same people unless we're like completely different, a very different approach. Maybe we could push more for retail over Kickstarter. Like we're still going to be mostly marketing to the same people, because when we announce this little Garphiller card game, whatever it might be, we're going to be selling at first to the same people. So we have to be careful not to, oversell to the same people. Obviously, with time, that would change. You'd find a different audience for those groups of games. But honestly, like, I love what we do already with the games we make. If we can do other games that are slightly different, that's cool. But the focus, I think, really for Garphill is the games that people are expecting from us. Like, people love the historical stuff from us. And the more, I guess, they're not serious games necessarily, but they're not silly games. They're games that feel mature and feel like you can really just get in and enjoy the theme and stuff without being too wacky. But hey, who knows? We'll keep trying new things. We'll see.
Is it right to say if we can make a living putting out the games that we want to put out, we're going to keep on doing that?
Yeah, exactly. It's about expectations, right? Like why would we put out a silly party game about fairies? Like why? Like our fans don't want that from us. They will go somewhere else for that. So you want to put out games that people expect, with a few little games here and there that feel somewhat adjacent. I think is kind of fun.
Yeah, I really like that approach where we keep designing games we know that the people that like our games in the past will continue enjoying. And that's what we're going to always do. We're going to keep doing that, making those games. But then just that permission, I guess, to take a risk, to have a few experiments here and there, see how other styles of games that have some crossover, that have some connection to our previous titles. Like Hadrian's Wall, in a sense, was a bit of a risk as well, even though it's, super Euro-y, there's a lot of connection, that whole pen and paper stuff we hadn't done before. So yeah, I love that approach that you're doing, and I'm enjoying taking risks with design and also going on the straight and narrow. So put me in the box, put me outside of the box, I don't mind.
Have you ever felt like a player broke any of your games to a point where you felt you missed this during the design and playtesting phases?
So I assume this is talking about a published game from the question. So I do have one story, and I have told it before on some podcasts. I don't think it was our podcast, but with Architects of the West Kingdom, players capture other players' workers, but the workers that you capture, they sit on your player board, and the other players can't access them until they get put in prison. But there is an action where you can pay an exorbitant amount, 5 coins. It's a lot to get all your workers back. And that was put in the game just as a failsafe. If someone was being a meanie, holding on to other players' workers, they need to have a way to force them to get them back. But we decided, I think it was quite late in the piece, that there could be another way to do it. Just say that players don't have any coins and they mismanage their workers and their economy, and they basically could get shut out of the game if they had no coins and they didn't gather coins and they didn't have any workers left. They couldn't get their workers back. And so we put in this system where players could always do this. They could take a debt and lose a virtue, which on average, that's a loss of about 3 points. So a player could lose 3 points in a game where you normally score 40-ish points. It's quite a lot, but you get all your workers back. You don't need to have any resources. And so we sort of put this in as a failsafe. We saw it a little bit in our playtest, but hardly ever. But when I play with my friend Luke, he did this thing where he would do that action as often as possible. And what his plan was that the moment someone captured his workers, just one of his workers, two of his workers, he would go there, he would take a debt, he would drop a virtue, and he'd get all his workers back. And then someone else would capture his workers, and he would do that again. And what he's trying to do is get in the minds of the other players, saying, if you capture my workers, you're not going to make money off of them, and you're going to suffer. And so then what happens psychologically is players don't capture his workers. He's taught the whole table a lesson, leave my workers alone. Now, I don't actually think this breaks the game. I don't think that it's OP or anything, but it's really interesting that he kind of came up with this whole new meta game, which changed how other players were playing the game. And that brought this kind of psychological element to the game that wasn't there in as much strength as before. So this was something that was really interesting that we didn't see in playtesting that I saw once the game was published. Anything else? Are we willing to be embarrassed by... I also found the infinite point combo in Paladins. Yeah. Maybe I'm not supposed to talk about that on the podcast because it'll bring a little bit more publicity to it. There is a way to score infinite points if you've got the right promo cards in Paladins of the West Kingdom. But then I think one person's found it online, but I did find it first. So there we go. After it was released, I think. Yeah. All right. So another question, which is an interesting one. It looks like sometimes expansions are planned or even in development before the base game is released. As a designer, if you're already thinking about an expansion while the base game isn't done yet, why not include it in the base game? How do you decide where you end the base game's scope and where the expansion begins?
That is a good question. In most cases for us, we will make the base game what we want the base game to be. We won't even consider expansions. What we will often consider, because of how we do our Kickstarter campaigns, is some promos. So often before the game is even finished, we'll think, oh, these 6 cards or these 10 tiles or whatever it might be, these are going to be promos because they feel a bit outside the box. They feel a little bit game breaky or just more exciting or kind of wackier rule sets that don't need to be in the base game. So that's quite common for us. For like full-blown expansions, it's very rare for us to have one in development or designed while a game is still being developed. I think the only case I can think of would be with the South Tigris, because we knew that we're going to do expansion for each. And I wanted to design the base game boxes to accommodate the expansions, because we learned the lesson during the West Kingdom that like doing collector's boxes is not fun. Having all these extra products just to facilitate people storing their games is not great. So I want to make sure that whatever expansion we had for the South Tigris would fit in the base game boxes, and ideally in the inserts that we designed for them, which wasn't the case in the end really. But after we finished Wayfarers and Scholars, and while we were working on Inventors, we thought, let's start designing expansions for the other two, and they hadn't been released yet. I think Wayfarers was almost on Kickstarter as we started working on the Ties of Trade expansion, but there was still like a good year away from Scholars being on Kickstarter when we started working on Body of Books. And that was because we were actually done with the development of the game. Like we had decided this is the game, it's finished. Even though no one had played it, outside of our playtesters, we could comfortably go, let's start working on expansions. And I guess the question comes around then, well, why is it not in the base game, right? Like why, if you then did that, why not? And I think a lot of it is like, you want to present the best possible game with that sweet spot of rules. I'm not saying we did this because the games are quite complex, but if we added in, say, Tides of Trade to Wayfarers from the very start, that's even more complexity up front, even more noise and more things to comprehend. And we didn't want that in the game. So, yeah. And there's also an element of like, is the expansion essential?
Yeah.
If you take away the expansion, does the game still feel like a game? Does it feel like a complete game? And if the answer is no, if it's like, nah, it's definitely lacking something, that's when you might reconsider like parts of this should be in the base game.
Yeah, this question's a really interesting one because I remember getting asked this question when we were working on the West Kingdom, and I would emphatically answer no. Like, no, we don't work on the expansions at all before we've finished the base games. We wait, a year or so after the game is released, and then we can incorporate feedback. We can see from all the different data that's out there and all that sort of stuff. And I used to have the thought that if you had designed an expansion early on, it was kind of cynical in a way, where you're intentionally holding back content from people so that you can make more money in the future. That's kind of what I thought. But the argument really that lands home is the whole thing around rules that you're talking about, Shem, is you don't want to release a game that players get to the table, they're completely overwhelmed, and they might not play it again. You want to release a game which is a complete product in itself. It isn't lacking anything, but expansions are there for players who already know the game, who love the game, who want to explore more, who understand the nuances of the strategy and maybe want other paths to pursue and things like that. So I completely changed my answer once we got to the South Tigris, where the floor of the complexity was higher. The games were more complex than the West Kingdom games on average. And so to put in the expansions that we were working on that were fun from the start just wouldn't work. And I don't think that would lead to the game's success or enjoyment for other players, even though the expansions are cool.
So the other thing I've been thinking over the last few years as well is about that whole making the base game accessible, or as accessible as possible. And like looking back at Raiders of the North Sea, which arguably is one of our most successful games because of the Kennerspiel nomination, like it really put Garphill on the map. So many people, like the large majority of people will say to you, I like the game with the expansions. Like it's a clause, right? Like they won't even say the base game's great. They'll just say, I like the game with the expansions. But if I'd released that game with both expansions baked in from the very start, it would not have got that Kennerspiel nomination. It would not have been noticed. It would have been, oh, this is a bit complex. I can't show it to my family.
True.
Even though those same people won't play it now without the expansions, there's this weird thing of like, you almost want the base game, if you want that kind of mass appeal, I guess. Well, not mass appeal, but, wider appeal. You kind of want the base game to be fairly simple, really. So there is an argument to actually holding back. And I know a lot of designers do this. Like I've heard stories of Catan, where Catan had all the expansions very early on, and they stripped them all out to make a very simple base game. And look at the success of that game. So it's a tough one. As designers, you want to put forward the best game possible in your opinion, and like what you think is the most developed version of the game. But I guess it's a lesson I'm learning as we walk through this as well, is like maybe we need to start stripping back some stuff, because the South Tigris was fun and it was our chance just to let rip and do like big, heavy, complex games that we love to play over and over again. But we have definitely learned that the complexity has been a big stopping point for a lot of people, because there are a lot of rules up front, and it's going to put off a lot of people, despite the fact that if it had been a base game with some expansions that made Scholars what it is now, tons of people would be into that game because they've played a more basic version up front, and then they've jumped in with expansions.
There's actually one other story from the South Tigris. Do you remember, Shem, with Wayfarers, we got to this point where when we were designing the base game and we were thinking, oh, maybe the game wants some more layers. And we asked ourselves the question, if we were to design an expansion, what would it be? Do you remember that?
I can't remember, but maybe.
Yeah, so we asked ourselves that question, and that introduced the inspiration cards. The inspiration cards were not part of the early prototypes, and they came about as a result of answering that question, what would we put into an expansion? And we put them in, and we liked them so much for the different kind of focuses it forced the players to do, and the way that they would enable particular strategies to score really, really highly. It meant the game felt way more sandboxy, because not only can I get this star card that means that my vistas are scoring, all of them are scoring, now I can double that. And it kind of gives players permission to go after this extreme strategy that they want to pursue, as well as giving players focus. Okay, this thing is going to be eligible once I get 4 cities. Okay, I need to get 4 cities. So that was something that we thought could have been an expansion, but we actually added to the base game once we came up with it. So yeah, that was a fun little process for us just to ask that question while designing the base game.
I guess it's also an example, though, something we could have pulled out. And would the game have been more successful or less successful? Probably the same. It probably wouldn't have made much difference. We would have noticed it's missing for sure. We're like, oh, I wish those cards were in the game. But the player playing the first time wouldn't even know it's a thing, and their experience would probably be much the same. So it's a tough line to walk, I think.
Yeah.
You want to put forward the best game possible, but you have to be very mindful of who's picking up this game, who's learning it. Are they going to want to teach the game to their friends? That's a big question to ask, I think. And for us with the East that we're working on now, for me, one of the big key points is I want to make games that I want to teach. So all 3 East games are games that I want to be like, yeah, I want to teach you. Let's play this game. I want to show you how to play it. Whereas I've I've got memories of real times at conventions where someone's like, "Can you please teach me Wayfarers?" And I've gone, "Oh no, like I don't want to teach that game. Like I want to play
Zach,
it,
can
but I
you
don't
go
have
teach them
Yeah, I want to
Wayfarers?
play.
I want to avoid that in the future. So not to say we won't do big, heavy, complex games because we love playing them, but
We do, yeah.
one of the signatures I want for the East is that they are games I want to teach. I actively want to go and teach people the games.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to mention one other aspect of this where I think people sometimes don't realize what the timeline is behind the scenes as well. Often before we even get to Kickstarter with some of our games, because as Shem mentioned, we've got a bunch in the pipeline. That means that a number of games are ready well before we get to Kickstarter. So maybe they've been completely finished development, completely finished art, and it's possible that after that point, a designer has an idea for an expansion and then starts working through some ideas for that expansion because at that point they maybe finished the game months ago. But then it looks to the outside world like it's all happened at the same time as well. And, it's a very real possibility. And when we get to a Kickstarter, our games are ready to be published. We're not like some other companies where they just kind of get to Kickstarter with a half developed prototype and then spend time developing that after they've received some money for it. So I think it's like to the outside world, sometimes it can seem like the expansion has been developed at the same time as the game, but
Right. Yeah.
even though the game might come out and then the expansion's also ready by the time the game comes out, it wasn't actually concurrent design, shall we say.
And the secret project is an example of that too, where there is an expansion coming with it. And that really was because we kind of knew roughly in the year when the base game would come to Kickstarter. We kind of thought this probably around this time, September, October. And I get the question kind of was put out there because of the way nature of the game was like, well, could there be an expansion that kind of gives a different riff on the certain part of the game that I'll try not to mention? And it was kind of like, let's just throw it out there. You could do this, right? You could do this. And then Sam, liking a challenge, was like, oh yeah, jumps in the spreadsheets and starts working away on it. And then when that became a thing, we were about 3 or 4 months out from the Kickstarter date that we were aiming for. We start thinking, oh, what's the free promo? We often give away a free promo. And the thing was out there like, could you design another faction? Like one faction by itself, could you do it? And of course, Sam cannot say no to a challenge and thought, you know what, let's do it. And now there's going to be that 11th faction for free on the Kickstarter.
And we had to contact the illustrator after she'd already finished all the other factions and said, hey, can you please do one more faction? Because all the art was already finished, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And a little hint right now for listeners of Lens and Veil. This other faction is the only faction that we had 2 illustrations for. So there you go. You can try and figure it. They've got 2 forms. And Zach's not going to edit that out. Zach, that's the first thing you know about this game. There you go.
Yeah,
How do you feel?
Yeah. I don't know. This is coming out on the 21st of September. I'm not sure. I think, can't remember. We have some reels coming out that give some more hints. So we'll see. But it's probably the first real tidbit of information. Yeah. So another question: is designing games for you a 9-to-5 job, or are you constantly thinking about it 24 hours, I guess, or however long you're awake? Do you carry a notepad to jot down ideas?
It is all consuming, put it that way.
Yeah.
A part of that for me is like it's being in business. And if you are in a small business and you own a small business, it's all consuming, even if it's not creative work. But on top of that, designing and developing is so much of a creative process that your brain will not turn off. It will constantly be thinking about one little iteration or how to fix this problem or whatever it is. So it is like you will lose sleep over it.
Yeah.
I mean, even this week, I had a bad sleep, but I solved something. Like, and in those hours, I figured out something. So that's very much part of it. It's not 9-to-5. Like, even talking to my brother about it with illustrations, like he finds it hard to turn off in the weekend because he's like, oh, there's that illustration. I think I figured out how to solve that one thing, or he's feeling inspired by certain things he sees. So it's really hard. I think anyone who's in a creative job will understand that it's hard to switch off for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a blessing. It's really fun to be thinking about the games and thinking about how they improve and getting into the flow. Like problem solving is very rewarding. It's super fun. And so I'm often thinking about games and thinking about our games and how to fix them, improve them, other things. And I like to do that. I think it's good because if I'm just sitting in front of the computer screen and if I'm only thinking about it while I'm there in front of the computer screen at work, then that's not always my best creative time. So I like to make myself available to think about it other times. But the cost is that, sometimes I go out for lunch with my wife and I'm thinking about games. And so there is a cost like to thinking about it all the time. It can be really fun. It's really exciting, but I have to also try to manage it and be a balanced person and actually be interesting to talk to about other life stuff and not just games. So yeah, being obsessive about it is good for the job, but it's also something that you need to manage and temper, I guess.
I think for me it's slightly different. I really enjoy game design, but at Garphill I'm not hired as a game designer. My role is being the marketing manager. So I try to focus a lot of my effort into also marketing our games and trying to get them to a wider audience. But there's specific moments in a game design, and I've got less games on the go than Sam and Shem. So there are periods where we're in a certain point in a game design where just the ideas are flowing and there's the brainstorming and we come out with new stuff all the time. And that's happened a couple of times this year. And there I'll be thinking about it a lot. And then you kind of get to the point where that game is pretty much done and it's just about playtesting it every now and then and just making small adjustments. At that point, like it doesn't take up as much of my brain space. And I also, like, as the marketing manager, I try and like focus on what's needed in this moment, right? So especially when we're around a Kickstarter or within the months leading up to a Kickstarter, I want to focus as much on like how can I try and talk about this game? How can I communicate what this game's about in the best way? How can I reach the most people? And there's also creativity to that, right? So, I mean, as you will have seen with the secret project, I decided to try something completely different. And yeah, so I try and be hybrid, but I've always enjoyed that in my jobs is not doing one specific thing, but having a kind of a range of things I can work on. And that kind of keeps me motivated. It keeps me interested. I don't think I would want to be a full, like an only game designer. I don't think I would enjoy just doing that. I like to have a variety of things I work on.
I was almost convinced that you wake up in the middle of the night and you're thinking of these questions at the start of the podcast and you wake up your wife and you ask her just to try it on. Is that what happens? You're thinking about all these dilemmas? Got to keep it interesting,
No, I did hear one of our Discord members has been asking those questions to his wife, though, I think on the train, and they've been enjoying trying to respond to our opening questions. So maybe it's a good idea. Maybe it's good for marriage.
I don't carry a notepad around with me for taking down stuff, but I will often bring up like Google Drive on my phone and just jot down thoughts and stuff. And even like for workflow, often like in the evenings, I might just open up and make a little to-do list for the next day. Like tomorrow I need to do this stuff, get it done. That's just kind of how I operate. I don't use calendars to mark things. Like I've got friends in business that do heaps of calendar stuff and always making scheduling and things. And I can't work like that. So I love having lists to get through. So I often just make a big list for the day and just plow through that kind of work. Especially if it's quite mundane kind of jobs, like stuff that's not creative necessarily or not necessarily inspiring, having a list is a big thing for my productivity, just to get through it. And then once that stuff's done, then I'm free to go. Let's go into thinking land and start thinking through ideas and actually have some fun where I want to be.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I tend to do the digital stuff as well. But I think if you're doing digital stuff on documents, you need to remind yourself to go back and look at old stuff that you've written down. Because sometimes you forget about an idea or whatever. A physical notepad's kind of good because at some point you find that notepad again and you flick through it. Actually, the Great C, which we just announced, came about because I looked through an old notepad where I had this idea for this game that I'd started designing and then I'd stopped. And then I looked through a notepad. I'm like, oh, that's right. I had this idea. And then I went and took a shower, and then I like fixed all the problems that the prototype had in the shower. And then I was like, oh, okay, I need to make this prototype now. And then I ended up showing it to Sam, and then we went ahead and came up with the game. So having a physical book, I think, is good in that fact that even if you put it aside, you might find it again. And sometimes having a fresh mind on things that you've jotted down can lead to something, whereas maybe you didn't take it anywhere when you first wrote it down. So
yeah. And just to come back to your point a few moments ago, that there are moments in a game's design where the game is being really, really needy. And I love those moments, right? Where there is kind of this like open canvas, not open canvas, but the game starts responding in different ways and you need to keep thinking about it and problem solving and all that sort of thing. It's kind of like when you've got a crush and you're like thinking about her all the time, right? Like, or, there are those moments, but then it gets beyond that point when it becomes kind of stable and solid. And I think that was a really good point, that it's not all the time. Every game is needy. It's like these key moments, I guess. Okay, we've got another question here. What's a mechanic you secretly dislike? Now, I'm not sure how important the secretly part is, but what's a mechanic you dislike but would love to challenge yourself to design around?
Can't think of any like right this moment, but I have been in this space in the past. That helps. So I wouldn't say I actively dislike deck building games or that I did dislike them. But for Viscounts, it was very much a discussion with Sam about I'd like to make I'd like to make a deck building game that I enjoy. Because I'd played Dominion, I played a few others, and I found them kind of not very exciting. I didn't like the thing of just like you build up your deck and then in the game, this big reveal, oh, you won, cool, well done. Like I didn't enjoy that kind of feeling at the table. So for Viscounts, it was a challenge to make a deck builder that both Sam and I really enjoyed. There's also a ancient game that we haven't announced yet, which was tackling this kind of shared map space. I'll say that much, which I don't often lean towards in games. I wouldn't call it area control, the game, but it has very much that kind of feeling of like you're interacting on a map, you are vying for positions, and that's not something I'd usually design. So the birth of that game did kind of come from a space of like, can I make this work? Can I make a game that I enjoy in this space? Not to say I don't enjoy games in that space, but I've never designed in that space, I suppose, is the better way of saying it. And it was a challenge to design a game. Admittedly, I had to bring Sam on board to help make the game what it is now. I couldn't do it all by myself. But it was a fun challenge to actually work in a space that I wouldn't usually work in.
And the answer is yes, he can.
With the help of Sam.
I think my answer is I'm really fascinated by these games they call sandbox games. Now, I use the word sandbox a bit more broadly, but the games I'm talking about are like Western Legends, Outer Rim, Zaya, Legends of a Drift System, all of those ones. And something I find really there's something I find really compelling about those styles of games and how they're just kind of open and broad, but I've never really enjoyed any of them that much. So I don't actually like them, but I'm charmed by them, and I would love to design a game that was that style of sandbox game. I think part of the problem is that I just don't really enjoy pick up and deliver, and most of them lean on that really, really heavily. So is there a game that's sandbox that doesn't lean so hard on pick up and deliver? I'm not sure, but that's one that I would love to pursue a game design around. What are you guys' thoughts? Have you guys played sandbox games? Do you like them?
Yeah, I mean, I've played a bunch of those with you, Sam.
Yeah.
We played Merchants and Marauders as well. I think there's maybe one other. I think Zaya was my most enjoyable of those games. It was probably also the most swingy in terms of like what could happen in the game, but that kind of made it exciting. But games like Western Legends and Merchants and Marauders, Outer Rim, yeah, it just felt kind of unexciting for me. Like they were just ploddy, I guess. I think it probably is the pick up and deliver aspect, which I actually enjoy a lot of games. I don't mind this whole idea of get the stuff, make the little path, and try and do multiple paths in one go. It's like an optimization puzzle. But they do fall flat for me as well. I think a part of it is I often don't like games where it's the first player to get to this many points. I mean, Catan's the classic example. It's a reason I don't enjoy Jet Imperium very much, because it's like, it's not necessarily the player who gets 10 points wins, but it's the end game condition. And I think all those sandbox games that we've mentioned have that same thing where it's like, once one player hits this many points, the game ends. And for some reason, that just does not excite me in board games. I want to have either like a round-based end game, so people know when the end is coming, or some kind of control of the players where it's like a certain condition has been met. And yeah, you could say that as points, but points are boring. Like, why are points the trigger? But make it something else that's more exciting. Other thing, Sam, you often bring up when we're designing games, like almost every time we've designed a game, you're like, could it have a closed economy? Every time. Like it's one of Sam's to-do lists.
We did put it in Wayfarers with the workers, closed economy of workers, which I was I was proud of the fact that workers aren't your own color. They're all out there from the start of the game, and you could collect all of them. All right, so our final question is one that maybe is a little touchy with us all in the same call, but let's do it anyway. What are some of the most challenging things about collaboration? And what do you each often find yourselves giving up to make the creative process work?
Good question. I don't know. I think you guys are pretty good to work with. I don't feel like there's anyone who throws their toys out of the cot and is like, no, it has to be this way. And like, then at the same time, like Shem is the publisher, and so sometimes Shem's like, it needs to be this way because if it's going to be published, it's going to be this way. And me and Sam just have to be like, yeah, okay, we're not like we don't make the product, so we can't make those decisions. Like we don't have the expertise, and it's also not our call to make. So there are going to be some of those moments when Shem will just make a product decision. But I think in terms of like game design, everyone is willing to listen and to think about other people's ideas, and even if sometimes don't think they're good ideas at first, are willing to give them a go or think about them and come back and change their minds. So I've found that both of you guys are pretty open and not too stubborn. So that's good.
Zach, blink twice if you're in danger.
I think you touched on something there, Zach, which comes back to kind of roles and responsibilities. And this goes beyond like Garphill as well. I can recall situations in previous jobs and stuff where those roles weren't that well defined. And so arguments arise because people think that this is their place to speak or not their place to speak or whatever. And so that can be like awkward when you realize you get put in your place or something, or someone else oversteps and you're like, well, you shouldn't be saying that stuff. It's not your job. So I think it's important in any kind of collaborative relationship that people understand where they are placed, I guess, so what their role is, what their authority is, I guess you could say. And when it's two people co-designing a game and purely just designing the game, not publishing it, that should be equal footing, right? Like it should be every opinion matters and every question is answered and that kind of thing. And maybe it's different when it's like one is far more experienced than the other. There's always that, or there's maybe, I mean, you guys probably have this more with, say, Chaos Order. For you, Zach, is very much, and maybe you and me, Sam, with architects, like you come in as your first design and you're all ears. You're like, I'm listening to everything I can take and learning as much as I can. And you come in with that Padawan kind of feel and think of like, I'm here to learn and I want to take what I can. So that's kind of an unwritten roles and responsibilities a bit in that sense. But when it comes to like a business like ours, like we're not all doing the same jobs, like we're not all doing the same roles and we haven't really necessarily written them all down. So there's going to be times where it's like, actually, that's not your call. Or, we don't have those big things down at all, really. But there's room for it, I suppose, where, like you've already said, Zach, we're like, there's some things that I make a call on because I'm the publisher. Until you guys know that's the case, there might be an awkward situation of like, actually, that's not your job. So there's that, right? There's that. But I think for those people who are listening, it's probably more about, I'm guessing it's more about co-designing board games, right? That's the bigger discussion. So I think it's important in those cases for like, to kind of understand like who bought the game, like who brought this concept forward, and they should probably be the lead designer. It's kind of important in those cases where one person has the core idea, the other player is supporting them to a point that you're both equally invested in the game. There are definitely games where like we've done, say me and Sam, where it leans more towards one of us. Like I think Wayfarers, even Architects, of course, was far more Sam bringing forward a playable concept and then we're developing together. Whereas a game like, I guess more like Paladins or Ezra Nehemiah, it was like, we're in this from the start together and we're fleshing out every concept together and you get ownership far faster in that situation. Whereas for me, I look back, I still think of Architects as kind of Sam's game, like, because he brought that whole concept to begin with. And sure, I helped co-design it, but like, it's kind of his baby and like, I still see it as that as well.
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah, good communication is the key. And what you're just hinting on there is just a little tidbit. I think there are two main ways that you can design as a group or as a pair. And those are the game jam approach, which was the Ezra and Nehemiah, some of the other games we've been working on recently, Shem. Or the reality is someone has to bring the initial concept. It's quite hard to kind of, there's this kind of like irreducible complexity to a game where you can't just build the legs and then build the arms and build the body. Someone actually has to see the thing as a whole and bring it to the point of being able to play it as a whole before you can jump in together and talk about it and know that you're talking about the same thing, because it's quite hard to translate some of those concepts. So some games will have like a lead design. That's probably the wrong word, but the person that just has the initial idea brings it to this point that it is easy to translate to the other person, and then they carry it together. Those are the two ways I would suggest that people should co-design, is either game jam from the start, really just set aside hours and hours to do it, or several sessions where you're just in the same room together brainstorming applying a bit of time pressure can be helpful, or that whole someone takes it to a certain point and then from then on, when it's enough that you could call it a game, work on it together. I'm going to throw out a little bit of spice because the people want to hear spice. These guys know that I love them so much. But look, working as a two is fantastic. Like we both know that we want the same thing from the game, and we nut things out together. What I struggled with this year was working as a three, because the dynamic changes, and it changes from, oh, let's just figure this out together, to a 2 versus 1. Nah, bro, 2 of us think this, 1, nah. So that just is a completely different dynamic. Nah, but obviously loved it. But yeah, I noticed with the badges from Mars, they have this understanding about their 3-person dynamic, and they've kind of come to these sort of unwritten agreements, and how they work it out is that the majority wins unless one person feels really, really, really passionately and the other two don't. And so there's a little bit of nuance to their system with the 3-person dynamic. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting talking with them about that.
That's a key point actually, is like when someone gets very passionate about something, then I think it's when you should really listen, because I can recall moments when I've got quite passionate about something. That I know there was a case in Scholars, and I think Zach, you're involved in the playtesting of that particular play as well, where I was like, no, I am adamant that there's an issue here, and I felt like you guys weren't seeing it. And we've had it more recently too in a game where I was like, you're not seeing what I'm seeing, and you start feeling like defensive, like you guys haven't seen this. And we've probably all been in that situation where I think anytime someone gets very passionate like that, you should go, maybe there is something I'm missing, and like stop and go, okay. And then, there's not times like that. You're talking about the whole 3-person thing. I definitely feel that. Like, I think Sam and I will probably naturally fall back to like talking to each other, and like, oh no, Zach's involved. Let's bring him in, because we have this ease of design, me and Sam, where we can just like workshop something quickly. We did this with Assyria, where we're like, we've got to keep bringing Emma into the conversation, because it's not just us. He's the original designer, and he needs to weigh in on all the decisions, but we can so comfortably just go into our zone and just quickly iterate and do things without asking the other person. So, and, we've been in a band, Sam. We understand from previous experiences that some people can feel undervalued if their opinions aren't heard, and the same can be true in game design. So it's very important to like make sure everyone feels equally invested and that they're heard. Like, it's not just about making a game, it's about people growing and experiencing and learning new things as designers and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, it's good. All those are just gold. Like, good communication. If someone's passionate about something, maybe let it cool off, but make sure you really, really hear them out, because they're not just feeling these feelings for no reason. And also understanding, this is the key thing when collaborating, understanding that we all want the same thing for the game. We all want the game to be the best it possibly can. Now, we might have different beliefs and understandings about how we get there, but knowing that you're on the same team is so helpful. It's just a really great truth just to bring to the front of your mind. We all want the same thing for this game. We want it to be great. We want it to be awesome. And there are different ways of going about it. So let's try and figure this out together.
There's actually plenty of times that Sam will say, I'm thinking this, or like, I really think this should be a thing, or we should develop this further, or I think this is an issue in the game, or whatever it is. I'd like to add this to the game, whatever it might be. There's plenty of times that my initial thing is like, nah. But then I just know from experience, like, I need to sit on this and think about it. I need to actually, in my mind, figure out why Sam thinks this. Like, why does he think this is important? And then I have to basically rationalize, or understand at least, like, why he's thought that. And I might still disagree with what his solution is, but I need to actually understand his reasoning behind it. And once I understand his reasoning, then I can go, oh yeah, now we can get on side and I can maybe pitch other solutions. Or maybe I just need a time to actually sit on that solution and go, you know what, it's actually the right solution. You're right. I've thought about it too. I've thought of other solutions, and your solution is still the best solution. So sometimes you just need time to actually like mull over things.
And I've found that a great test is just making that change and testing it sometimes, because it definitely happened in Chaos Order, as the junior designer. If Sam said something, I was just, as you said, Sam, it's like, yeah, okay, let's go with that. But sometimes I'd be like, I don't agree with that change, but let's do it. Let's try it out, And sometimes I was right. Not always. Most of the time Sam was right. But sometimes I was right, and we would try something, and then it was like, oh, actually, you're right. That didn't work. That wasn't the right change. But it is worth sometimes just also for the sake of going, like, you feel strongly about this, let's try it out and then see if it actually works. And the thing is with a game is you can always backpedal and you can go, actually, let's revert back to where we were and go in a different direction. So, and then you've tried stuff, then people have seen for themselves that their idea wasn't quite the right solution. So
Yeah, and every failure is still a step forward. Like we now have tried this out and we see something different from this vantage point. So from this failure, we might be able to come up with a solution that we couldn't have come up with if we hadn't tried that. You sometimes need to sort of fail forward in a sense.
Bottom line, though,
But collaboration is fantastic. Love it.
that was it. That was the bottom line. It lightens the load too, right? Like it's a great challenge I find for myself to still try and design solo, because it's the whole thing of can I still do this? But it's far easier to design collaboratively. The only negative I would say, because we asked the question straight away, what is the hardest part of collaborating? The hardest part is the fact that there's other opinions out there. That's the only hard part, is that you have to sacrifice your own thoughts or opinions, or at least set them aside for someone else's opinions to be more valuable than your own, which is a great life lesson anyway, putting other people's thoughts and ideas above your own. So it's good, and it builds you up quite a lot, but I still do enjoy the solo process from time to time as well, purely just to exercise those muscles for myself and not always rely on someone else to do certain parts of the job you might not enjoy so much, or that kind of thing. So a bit of both is good.
Love it. Cool. All right, on to our draft.
So welcome back to our draft of the top 200 games on Board Game Geek. I keep on saying in every podcast, welcome to this week or that week. Obviously, our podcast doesn't come out every week, so I apologize for doing that, but it just sounds right when I say it. So every podcast, we are drafting from 10 games in the top 200, and so far we've each drafted a game from 1 to 10, from 11 to 20, and from 21 to 30. So this week we're up to 31 to 40. And the draft works that, first of all, the third pick will ban one game from these 10 games, and then we'll go through our pick order. Third pick this podcast will be Sam, and so he gets to ban first. Let me just read out the games. We screenshotted all the games when we started this, just in case any switch. So I'm reading 31 onwards. Too Many Bones, The Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, Terra Mystica, Sky Team, Wingspan, Orleans, Slay the Spire the board game, Barrage, Mage Knight board game, and SETI Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. So take it away, Sam, with your ban.
I don't like this. I can't. I banned Gaia Project, didn't I? But I can't ban this game. I just have to hope. Look, if there's delusion, there's hope. And I'm going to delude myself into thinking this game is going to make it through to me. So I'm going to ban... I don't even know what I want to ban here. I'm going to ban Wingspan. Wingspan is a crowd favorite. So if we're voting on lists, then it's going to be one that would be rated really, really highly. It's sold millions of copies. It's a great game, but I'm banning it so no one can pick it.
Nice.
Gosh, darn it, Sam. No, I wasn't going to pick that one anyway. I mean, if Wormspan was in there, that may have
Wingspan is great.
Maybe.
Fantastic.
Is it in the top 200? It must be by now.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we might find out.
All right, so these are all fairly well-rated games from me. There's one I have not played, which is Duel for Middle-earth. I do enjoy Seven Wonders Duel, but I've not played this one yet. So who knows? This could have been my top, that one. But I haven't played it, so I'm not gonna.
You could choose it. You totally could choose it.
I could.
I heard it's great.
The rest are all 7, 8s, and 9s for me, so I'm getting a win regardless. I know what Sam wants, and the honest truth is, it is the highest rated of all these games for me. But I'm in a bit of a dilemma because I'm like, well, if I could choose any one of these games to play right now, which game would it be? And I'm going to go with that. And I'm going to choose SETI. It's by no means a perfect game, and maybe it is because it's more recent. But of all these games, if I had to pick one to play, I would be picking that one right now to play, with the exception of Middle-earth, because I'd probably play that because I haven't played it yet. So I'm going to go with SETI, and I'm going to be nice and kind and give Zach the chance to see if something that Sam wants as well.
He's not taking it.
We'll see.
He's not taking it.
Sam has me pinned down because I think Sam could have banned certain things, but it would have ended badly for him because I will be picking Slay the Spire, the board game. Now, I'm a very big fan of Slay the Spire, the video game. And when I played the board game, I went, wow, this is fantastic because I don't play Slay the Spire with mods. I think it has mods where you can play multiplayer, but the game is a single player game. Slay the Spire, the board game, is a co-op, and it's just really fun. It's really fun playing Slay the Spire with your friends. I played it a few nights ago with my two brothers. We had already done 2 levels, and we're doing the 3rd level with the decks that we had already built up, and we just lost. We needed one more turn against the final boss, and we got defeated. So isn't that great, making it all the way through 3 levels and dying at the end? But that's what Slay the Spire is. It's a roguelike. You have to start again. And so my pick is Slay the Spire, the board game. Fantastic. It's a 10 for me.
Great game. And you guys are good to me. I do not deserve this, but I will take it nonetheless. Terra Mystica, easiest choice of my life.
It's about collaboration. It's about knowing what other people want and, and making sacrifices.
Exactly. You're willing to sacrifice.
Compromises. Yeah.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I felt like Doctor Strange. I saw all the possible futures. I saw that if I banned Slay the Spire, it would not turn out well for me. And so I had to go with a neutral ban. So there we go.
Yeah, and if you'd banned SETI, then Shem probably would have picked Terra Mystica. So
yeah, exactly. Maybe.
Yeah, probably. That or Barrage, to be fair, would be my next one.
Well, congrats on 1 year, guys.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary. It's been great. Thank you to all our listeners. You've been legends. I hope you're enjoying the show. Let us know in our Discord server if there's anything. Yeah, if you've got any more questions, we might be able to answer some questions on future podcasts. Not sure. Let us know if there's any other special episodes or guests or anything you want us to cover. We won't guarantee that we will do those things, but we like to hear from you regardless. We really appreciate your support.
Thanks. Yeah, and just feel free also in our Discord to share any feedback on the things you like about the podcast, things that you'd maybe like to see, or things that you don't enjoy as much, so that we can keep on making it better. Cheers. Thanks for listening to the Lens and Veil podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Garphill Games. You can follow Garphill Games on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, X, and YouTube by subscribing to our newsletter at garphill.com or by joining the Garphill Discord server. That's right, eh?
I think I'm first pick, aren't I?
I just did the podcast yesterday.
Maybe you're right.
I picked Arnek before Shem, I think, in the last one.
Oh, I haven't listened to it.
Shem banned the Great Western Trail. So, yeah.
Dang it.
So,
no.
Yeah.
I cannot tolerate this.
So,
no.